Welcome to Brutal But Brilliant, where we dive into the real conversations that shape our lives, how we lead, and our well-being. I'm Kelly Lewis, and today we're tackling a topic that so many women in leadership face but rarely talk about: shrinking themselves. Whether it's downplaying achievements, softening their opinions, or avoiding the spotlight altogether, too many women find themselves holding back, sometimes without even realizing it. But why does it happen? And more importantly, how do we break free from it? Joining me today is an incredible woman who brings both professional insight and personal experience to this conversation. Stephanie Smith, licensed master social worker, therapist, and owner of Starfish Counseling and Consulting, will help us unpack the psychological and societal factors that contribute to this pattern and share with us how she's navigated these challenges in her own career. This conversation is about power, confidence, and owning your own story without apology, unshrinking yourself. So let's get into it. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us today. I'm very excited to have you here. One of my dearest friends. And I think I want to start our time together today by asking you the question of, you've been in leadership for a really long time. So what is the most fun thing you've ever done as a leader?
Well, I have been a supervisor in a large state department for over 20 years. And when I started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to figure things out. But over the years, I've really found my footing. And I don't know that it would be classified as fun as much as it's rewarding, but I love teaching and guiding and giving back. And, one of the best compliments that I ever get is when people come back and say either I was their favorite supervisor or that I made an impact on them or that they would work for me again. And so also making ways and avenues for staff to then go on and further their leadership career. Like there's nothing better than that to me.
I love that. Like seeing them kind of take the torch and carry it on forward. So I love that. I love that. Very rewarding. We want to spend some time talking today, specifically, I think women and the different spaces that they show up. We sometimes hear this idea, this concept of they feel like they have to shrink themselves. And I know it's something that you and I have talked about quite a bit. And so I thought you would be perfect to come in and kind of have this conversation with me. So I'm going to dive kind of just straight in to kind of your experience with this and kind of unpacking that a little bit. So if you don't mind sharing, maybe an experience or a time where you felt you had to shrink yourself.
I thought about that and was thinking of maybe a time period that I could identify. But honestly, I think that I have felt that way through a majority of my life, whether it was being a daughter or a spouse or a mother or a friend or an employee, that I've always felt the need, maybe as a woman, to meet others' expectations and to fit into a box and to make sure that I'm doing that so that I can accomplish goals that weren't necessarily set by me, but were set by other people. I do feel like I was small in my roles, even though I was the main player in those roles. I don't feel like I had a lot of say-so in them.
Yeah, that's kind of the inspiration for the title of this podcast is based on a conversation that's from a movie that talks about this whole idea of why are you being a supporting character and not the leading lady in your life? And that's kind of what I hear you kind of talking about, is just playing that supporting character role, even in circumstances where you should be the lead character.
Right.
Yeah. How did you know you had shrunk yourself? How did you know that was happening?
I think I didn't realize it until I really started to age and get more experience at work and more experience as a person, as a friend, as a mother or a spouse. And I just started to feel empty and drained and tired. And I began having, I didn't know what they were at the time, but now I know that they were panic attacks, um, of just not having any control over what was happening in my own life. And that's where I really started to feel that I was not in control, that I had very little say so, even though it looked like I had tons and tons of responsibility and that I could make all these choices. They were very confined still.
Do you think people would notice that, like looking at you from the outside, or do you think it was a lot of an internal struggle for you?
Oh, I don't think anybody would have recognized that from the outside. Like nobody in my life would have said anything other than they really thought that I had it completely together or that I had everything. I really felt like it was so much of an internal struggle that it was just something that I had to deal with and that nobody else was dealing with this and nobody else was feeling what I was feeling, which I've come to kind of coin the term like I was an island and like nobody could possibly, you know, relate to how I was feeling. And that's why I wasn't talking about it.
Yeah, like such a lonely struggle. And that just like brings up that I wonder how many women deal with that those feelings in whatever space they're in. And it's so isolating and feels so lonely. That's, I mean, to feel like an island. You mentioned when you were kind of first kind of talking about the different spaces this has happened, different roles that it's happened in. And it makes me wonder, where do you think this originates from for women? Like, where do you think this kind of comes from?
I mean, honestly, I think that it is very systemic. I think that we are still in very gender based roles and climates and characteristics. And as a single mom now, like I am expected to do all of the things for everything. Like there is nobody to lean on. And so I really had to muster up the energy to be all things to all people and then to not complain about it because to complain about it isn't very pleasant or it's not very feminine or demure or any of those things that we so much expect for women to exude.
Yeah. I almost hear like these like internalized expectations. And like I can't help but think about like we start to internalize those expectations even as like as kiddos, as like little girls, we start to experience that.
Well, and I can remember being little and thinking, all I wanted to do was to grow up and get married and have children and be a fantastic mom. And it really didn't go any further than that. Like I didn't have, even as a teenager, I don't remember having like big hopes and dreams for myself of like being successful or being able to financially care for myself. And so I do feel like it was very much rooted in my childhood and things that were, um, I guess, not pushed onto me, but basically just kind of set out there for me already through TV and toys.
Yeah. So like, which I mean, if that's someone's, if that's someone's hope or dream to be a mom and just raise kids, which that's completely fine. But I think it touches on that idea of like we're sometimes fed like what we should do or it should look like this. And then I think, and you touched on this a little bit, it it really marries with those people pleasing expectations and the people pleasing behaviors we often um see women talk about a lot and really kind of struggle with.
Hmm. Very much so.
So I know we kind of, talked a little bit about this, like when you felt like you were kind of shrinking yourself and that feeling of feeling like an island, and really dealing with it internally, a lot by yourself. What do you think held you back from talking about it a lot or from kind of putting it out there?
I think a lot of it was I was just not being honest with myself, because if I was honest with myself, then that meant I had to do some work, and doing the work is hard. But I have, really worked hard in probably the last 10 years of my life and my career and parenting to be honest with myself and to call myself to the table when I have made a mistake, because it's so easy for us to just keep moving, because if we make a mistake, we have to own it.
Oh, that accountability can be hard. Um, so you're kind of talking about that kind of self accountability and doing the work yourself. How did you unshrink yourself? Um,
Um, I have done a lot of therapy, but it has been very intermittent. Like I would go and I would get what I felt like I needed, and then I would stop, and then something else would come up, and I would go and I would get what I would needed, and I would stop. But several years ago, I made the decision to go back to grad school because I was going to retire eventually, and I needed something to do. And I really feel like going to grad school, as hard as it was on everyone and everything around me, has really helped me to become who I was supposed to be. Like the ongoing education, like I am a lover of books. Like, me, I'm not going to sit down and read nonfiction. Like I'm sitting down in my, free time to read self-improvement books, because I want to know everything about everything that's going on or with me or my family or my friends or the environment or society. Um, but also a lot of self-talk. And when I say self-talk, our our internal voice is normally and very easily negative. And that is an easy emotion to go to. It's easy to identify what we've done wrong. But what I have learned to do is to positive self-talk. Like it's very structured. It's very goal-oriented. Sometimes I go on a script of telling myself very specific things, because those are the specific things that I need to hear when I start to feel like I am not doing well.
I love that you brought that up because I was thinking about even when you were going to grad school, some of the negative self-talk that you really challenged within your own brain about even taking that leap to like, I'm going to do this. And I think that self-talk and what we tell ourselves, even if we don't necessarily believe it in the moment, is so powerful. It's so powerful.
No, I agree. Like I had been told by people that I didn't have the time or that I wasn't smart enough, which I knew I was definitely smart enough. But it's that time aspect of like, yeah, what am I taking away from who?
Yeah.
But I really started to realize that eventually and very quickly, it was going to be me. Like my kids are going to fly the nest, and I have to take care of myself. And that's really become a focus of mine in probably the last 8 to 9 months, is to focus genuinely on myself and to not feel bad about it and to not feel like I am being selfish about it.
Oh, and I think that's something that so many women struggle with is prioritizing their own needs, their own hopes and dreams, and not feeling that guilt and not feeling that shame of their disappointing by someone else by not meeting someone else's needs by taking care of themselves. And I think that plays into this whole shrinking themselves because I see so many women and talk to so many women who put their self on the back burner because everyone else is on the front burner. And this is what happens when when they do that, and that shrinking of themselves. And so what I hear you saying is like it takes intentional work to put yourself on the front burner and really battle the the shame that might pop up when you do that.
Yes. And I think a lot of it comes in with being alone and having alone time to really reflect and to do the things that fill my soul. Like, I love to read. I love to sit outside. I like to go work out. I like to clean my house. Like, these are things that feed my soul so that I can go and do my job and take care of my children adequately and go out and have fun without having, in the back of my mind, I didn't take care of other things. And it wasn't really that I wasn't taking care of other things, because honestly, the dishes don't matter. I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's, self-care has become one of those buzzwords that feels almost like another task. And I know you talked about this before, like it's just another to do. But I like how you framed it of like feeding your soul, because if we don't feed our soul and we don't truly care for ourselves in that way, there are ramifications that happen. And we end up kind of shrunken and not being that lead character in our lives for sure.
Well, and for me, it was like I had just lived life from one milestone to the next, that I wasn't really making decisions, that I was getting older. So, like, the next progression in life was natural. And now I am choosing, like, what is going to happen in my life instead of my life happening to me.
How much of that is correlated to like your self-worth?
Oh, all of it. Like, I I think we all have those days where we feel bad about ourselves, or we look in the mirror and we don't like what we see, either aesthetically, or we had a bad night, or we have a bad attitude. But overall, like, I know now that I'm very worthy. And I know for a fact that anything that anybody has planted in my head at any point was all about them and nothing about me.
I love it. I just want to be like, yes. Absolutely. I know we talked a little bit about like these internalized expectations and kind of that internalized kind of people pleasing mentality. It often starts when we are much younger. We both have daughters. And so I'm a little bit curious, how do you instill this idea in your daughter of not shrinking herself?
Okay, I'm going to get emotional because it's my daughter. Um, so I have worked hard, but tried not to make it look like work with her. But I had to be very careful not to bring my baggage in when I would be given situations with her to help guide her, right? Instead of just telling her how she should be, what she should do, what expectations were. I wanted her to start bringing things to me and start talking to her about, like, well, what do you feel about that? How does that make you feel inside? It would have been really easy, almost easier to parent if I had just told her, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And then and you're going to like it. These are the rules and you follow them. While I believe that, yes, we all have rules and we all have to follow rules, and she is no exception, there is some gray area in there. There is room to wiggle and to navigate. And the last thing that I want for her is for her to grow up and to be a people pleaser from the time she was a small girl to when she was a teenager to when she's a young adult. And then she ends up in her 30s or 40s struggling with who she is because she was never given the opportunity to make the mistakes or to ask the questions. Like, I want her to feel whole in her life. And I hope that I provide that environment for her.
I love that. I have no doubt that you do. You set a beautiful example for her. And so, It's been awesome to get to kind of pick your brain about this today. Um, I think I want to kind of ask you a tough one here to kind of leave our listeners with, and that is, uh, what is something brutal but brilliant on this topic that you really want to share with those listening to us?
So I actually wrote this down because I did not want to get it wrong when I was relaying it. So what I have is that you need to pay attention to what drains your soul and to what feeds your soul. Because learning to stop holding so tight to those unspoken expectations so that we can open the paths to be our best self.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.